Having a proper form control system is a key part of almost every web application. This is useful in various cases, but more importantly in a sign-up page. Angular provides a solid way to validate the user input with a module called Reactive Form module. By the end of this video, you'll be able to implement a nice looking form from scratch and also validate the user input so that you can display custom error messages to the user. If you are not interested in the UI part, use the timestamp to jump straight to the validation part of the video. Like any sign-up page, we need at least one email and one password field in the form, but we are going to add 3 more, one for the username, one for the date, and one for the phone number. Personally, I choose to put each entry and its label in a div, and I change the CSS to display a grid so that each element fills a row. Don't forget to add the type of each entry because HTML already provides basic validation and useful functionality depending on the type. Like for example, the date types give you access to the built-in calendar so you don't have to create one yourself. And the password type automatically hides user input character for more security. I want this form to look like a card and I want it to be centered. So first in the CSS I added a box shadow to create a shadow effect and set the display to flex so that I can center the fields in the form. For the background, I use a color gradient found online. An easy way to center a div is to set the position to absolute, set the left and top to 50% and use the transform to translate the div in the opposite direction by 50% on the Y and X axis. We can also increase the drop shadow when the user hovers over the card and set the transition to 0.3 seconds to make it smoother. I also made some minor changes like the font thickness and the border color for the input element. Now we need to add some control for each field in order to reduce the risk of having a bug when we want to process the data. First, we go to the app module.ts and add reactive form module to the import array. Now we can create a form group and we need to initialize that form group in the constructor so that the DOM can use it as soon as the viewing it. A form group is basically a set of form controls, so we need to define our form controls in the constructor of the form group. And we will create a form control for each input field in our HTML. The next step is to connect the form in the HTML to the form group by adding the form group attribute to the form element, and we also connect each input field to a form control just by adding the form control name attribute and passing the name of the control. By the way, this is the name we gave to the control in the form group constructor. Now if we add a submit function to the form and log the form group value, here we have our data. Back to the form group, we can add one or more validator for each form control. For example, if we want a field to be mandatory, we can add a require validator. In this case, we will set 3 additional validators. One on the name, so that the length of the username does not exceed 20 characters, one on the password so that the user doesn't set a password with less than 6 characters, and one to validate the email format. There are many other validators and you can also define your own custom pattern if you want. A validator on a password doesn't mean that the user cannot enter a 3-character password. The user can, but it's up to us to decide how we want to handle this case. For this video, we're only going to show some error message to the user. First, we want to make sure that the user has already clicked on the submit button before we show any error. We can do that by setting a boolean to true when the button is clicked. We also want to make sure that the form control has an error. We can create a getter so that we have a quicker access to the form control and check if there is an error. If that's the case, according to the validator we have defined, we can display a custom message. Now, you have to do this for every input. That's it for the reactive form and validator on Angular. Ask in the comment if you have any question. Thank you for staying in to the end. Like and subscribe if you found this video useful. See you in the next one.